issue that we want to be dealt with.
There's this wonderful book by Michelle Alexander called The New Jim Crow. It's all about this mass incarceration system, and she relates her struggle to get the NAACP to shift some of its resources to what, to a large degree, is a black bourgeois issue, which is affirmative action. Which is not to say you shouldn't fight to keep affirmative action alive, but she says it's way overemphasizing the NAACP. And 1 in 3 black males with a felony record because of the racially disparate way that the war on drugs is waged. I mean, the only times in my life I've ever been pulled over not for a seatbelt was in the ghetto, and the cops the second time told me, "Oh, we just do this here." And then I looked around me as they're going, you know, as they're apologizing to me for giving me a ticket for no seatbelt. And there's 6 black guys pulled over, and they're going through their cars because they're just pretext stops. That's how they do it, you know. I tell you, people are looking for a new social movement in this country. I think rolling back the mass incarceration system is a really, really, really good one. You mentioned the raids. You know, I was thinking of doing a piece about Obama and the left. That too often, the way a lot of us on the left have talked about Obama and the left, it's just a nice kind of glassy kind of story of how he co-opted us and came along and seduced us. It's kind of like Bobby Kennedy's campaign in 1968. And I see another image in 1968 of Mayor Daley at the Democratic Convention on the International Amphitheater, caught on lead to TV as Ribicoff is up there denouncing the Gestapo-style tactics as the cops are beating the crap out of anti-war demonstrators in front of the Hilton. And you can see Mayor Daley going, "F you," and you know, and all the Daley kin, you know, sounds are giving the finger to those guys. You know, there's been more there with the Obama people too. There's a whole. I've got a friend out east in Boston who keeps stories of this, of episodes where the Obama people have just been telling the left to go basically and jump off a cliff, you know. And these FBI raids are real extraordinary. You know, they're prosecuting whistleblowers much more aggressively than Bush does. Anybody from within the federal government that tells us the truth about war policies. Yes, sir.
Yeah. I got a 19-year-old.
Sure.
And looking at a 19-year-old, young black man, there's no interest in politics. And I went to the social forum in Detroit, back in when was it, May, and I spent the last...
Which did get covered in the media.
Right. Not much.
Not much.
Not much, you know. But, and basically, I spent the last 25 years of the 20th century outside the country. I came back in 99. I came back in time, just in time for 9/11, right? I came back just in time. But even then, I wasn't even here when that happened. I had gone back over to finish some work. And at the social forum, one of the things that came up was, where are our predecessors? Where are the young people? What is it that we've been doing? I mean, I look at everybody here, the average age looks about 45. Generous. I mean, generous. The average age is 45.
Some young people over here. I see
So, I mean, so it's like, what is, you know, like, look, I voted for Obama because I wanted to take a vacation from my political cynicism. I just wanted 18 months to kind of lay off, you know, take a look at it, look at things, you know, because when you spend a lot of time outside this country, you're able to, especially to watch something like 911 from abroad, from like France, England, and Holland, and to watch television and to see, you know, and it was then when I saw how horrible it was. I mean, I really understood how backwards politically we were. Yeah. You know what I mean? And not only that, how fragile economically this country was. You know, and that,
you know, a lot of our opinion numbers aren't that bad. I mean, it's on issues. It's amazing. There's a majority progressive opinion base in this country on health care, on labor rights, on income equality. So, but where we're backwards on the institutions that exist.
Yeah.
And we don't have time either. That's a very underestimated issue. People are overworked in this country. And so they have to build the institutions from scratch that already exist in Europe. They got to do it with less time.
Right. So what happens with, building social movements, right? Okay, we don't need mass movements, but what we do is we need effective social movements of any size. I don't foresee us having 1 million in the streets like we had in Paris a few weeks ago. You know what I mean? Being in Paris, I mean, you know, like living in Paris, it's almost like every 3 months there's a demonstration. You know, every 3 months there's like 20,000, 30,000 people in the street or something. And they get results, you know? So building that isn't going to happen here except incrementally. You know, like the Hispanic women here who got the library that they wanted.
But you know,
they set in.
If you've been here on May Day in 2006, right here in Chicago, it would have blown your mind, though.
You know,
with on the immigrant rights thing. Right?
Yeah,
really took me by surprise.
I would say that that's rare. It's not, you know, it's an exception. It isn't rare.
Yeah.
It's like you talk to most people, you know, I talked to my 19-year-old, you I try to talk to them about politics, and it's back to the video game because of this. So it's like, the question is, how do we build? I mean, how do we bring these young people? Hip-hop has clearly failed. Hip-hop is co-opted by corporations, totally. You know what I mean? Progressive hip-hop is out there, but it's silenced. You know? So it's like, what do we do? Where do we go? How do we build these small cadres of people? Because I'm only interested, because I remember as in the 60s when I worked, I didn't work with large parties, I worked with small groups that became very effective and were able to do whatever it is that we need to do. Right? So that's a question. How do we bring these young people back into this? Because, 25, 30 years, some of us ain't gonna be here. You know what I mean? And every time I go to something like this, whether it's a black nationalist thing on the South Side, the Social Forum was really the most most progressive and really the most optimistic that I've seen, because I saw tons of young people there. But they were coming from the West Coast, they were coming from the East Coast, they were coming from down South. But the Midwest, it seems like,
to some extent, this is a struggle, I think, level of education. I have saw such a shift. I did a visiting professor year at Northern Illinois University, and I tried to act like my teachers acted. I just was unabashed about the fact that I would teach a history course, and while I was teaching a real history and facts and all that, nonetheless, I like the teachers I had in the 70s. My idea of a successful class was where 10 kids were up at the lectern at the end, and we just send them into Students Against Sweatshops and into the global justice issues. There's nothing wrong with that. Something's changed. There's a fear about doing that now, and we gotta talk to teachers a little bit about getting some courage again. Now, you're the only adult that I remember one of my colleagues said at Northern, I'm an adult. It's talking about history and policy, and they need to hear an adult say that the Iraq War is wrong. A lot of teachers are very cowed right now. They interact directly with kids, and there's a lot you can do with them. I remember in the 90s we did a whole bunch, and we took buses down to Washington, D.C. and protested the IMF. I know that's too short an answer to your question, but I do think that teachers need to be talked to and do more. Maybe I need to go back and start teaching again. I don't know.
This is our last question.
Okay. I just want to make the point. I think one of the things that we on the left has failed is we just have not taken into our consciousness the whole concept of empire. I think the separation, the almost total dismissal, ignorance, not paying attention to the wars, I should say, to the veteran struggles. There's a group called Iraq Veterans Against the War that have been doing incredible work among veterans, trying to challenge. The left has not responded to them in any large way. But it's also like the international thing is not even questioned, that we're just looking at ourselves here. And I think we've got to put those two together. I think the concept that really the only one that can explain this together in a real way is the concept of empire. You alluded to it, the bases around the world, the $1 trillion a year for the war industry. I refuse to call it a defense industry. And it's insane. But most of the left, and I was glad to see the title of your book, where putting empire in it. I think
my first book was called Empire and Inequality. Yeah.
Right. That's right. But we've got to put this together, and it hasn't been picked up except for among a few of us. And I think the left has got to struggle with it. We've got to come to an understanding, because one of the things, for example, they're throwing a lot of money into the Treasury with the $600 billion that they're releasing now. One of the very interesting things, Michael Hudson, a professor, I think in Kansas City, just came out and said, what that's doing is that is further driving apart the global economy. Yeah. We cannot understand what's going on in this country without putting it into a global context. Not totally, not only, but it's got to be there. And so few of us are doing it. We've got to take that on.
And I'm not going to take a lot of time on the answer, but I will tell you that my transition out of my first chapter, which is called Business Rule as Usual, into my second chapter, which is called The Empire New Clothes, says exactly that, in the context of a critique of Paul Krugman, or an appreciation and a critique of Paul Krugman. But you can't see that argument unless you buy my book.
Thank you, Paul.